Cool, thank you all for coming today. We're going to talk a little bit about securing healthcare devices with AWS and Cynerio. My name is Chad Holmes. I'm a security evangelist at Cynerio, and I'll let Marty introduce himself.
Good morning. Again, I'm Marty Davis with Cynerio. I manage the partnership with AWS and will be available for questions after Chad's remarks. Thank you.
Thanks, Marty. I'm going to boot Marty off stage. I'll be doing the rest of the talking for a little bit here, but do ask Marty questions afterwards. He'll be able to answer quite a few. So jumping right in, a little bit about Cynerio before we start. We were founded in 2017, so about 5 years ago. Our goal is to secure every IoT, OT, and IOMT device in healthcare environments. That's something that's really easy to say. As you might guess, that's incredibly difficult to actually do. 2020 was a really big year for us. We had spent a few years building out our technology, and we're well rewarded with that. In 2020, we were named a Forrester Wave Leader, as well as a Gartner Cool Vendor, We also recently received a Wave score of a class score, of 94.8 based on customer reviews. So as we continue to build out our technology and our customer base, we keep getting recognized for that. We primarily focused on North America initially, but as we've built our customer base, it has grown worldwide. So we are seeing more and more installs worldwide as well. One of the first questions we always get when it comes to what we do is, why do you focus on healthcare IoT devices? Healthcare environments have spent lots of money, lots of time, lots of effort on putting IT systems in place. Why doesn't that protect all these new devices that were there? And the reason is in the evidence. We know that in the United States alone, there are at least 5 million devices that have known critical issues that are providing patient care at any one time. That means 5 million devices that are connected to patients, that patients are working with on a routine basis, that have a known issue that can be exploited if they're accessed by an attacker. Additionally, we know those devices are processing incredibly valuable data. They're processing data that can't be changed and is worth 20 times more on the black market than other data like credit card information. And the reason it's worth more is pretty simple. You can't change your past addresses, your name in many cases. You can't change the references in your medical records. On credit cards, you can do that. So healthcare environments routinely have issues on millions of devices, processing data that's incredibly valuable to hackers, and they don't have the protections in place to actually make sure nothing happens. 3/4 of environments we see have no actual protection or monitoring within their network. So ultimately, healthcare environments have become an incredibly rich target for attackers. And we've seen that during COVID the last 2 or 3 years, as ransomware attacks on healthcare environments have shot through the roof. Luckily, we're starting to understand more and more about why attackers are going after these environments, other than greed and evil. There's a great study that came out last September done by an organization called Ponymon. They do a lot of great studies. And what they found was that attacks on IoT and OT devices, IOMT devices as well, are much, much higher than expected. Nearly 1/4 of ransomware attacks on healthcare environments are rooted in devices. If you asked anyone before this study, they would have guessed 2, maybe 3%, not nearly 1/4. To put it a different way, if you think of the amount of time and effort and training that organizations put in to phishing and making sure that they don't get phishing attacks against their employees, that's the same rate of attacks as there are on devices. Hospitals are not spending nearly as much time, money, and effort on the devices as they are on phishing. So what we're finding is that attackers are incredibly crafty. They're smart people. They're evil people, but they're smart people. And so what they're doing is seeing that there are these massive, massive holes in healthcare security that they can attack much easier than the other systems that are out there. And so they're going after IoT and medical devices. And that's why we need to figure out a better way to plug that gap. To put it another way, if you want to see where you're going to get the most bang for your buck for security spend in healthcare environments, IoT is probably going to be one of the first places you should start looking going forward. And that's why we exist. We've built out 2 specific offerings that allow hospitals to start protecting themselves. The first is what we call attack detection and response, or ADR. I'm going to share a really cool case study with you in a slide or two. But ADR is almost like an emergency room for cyber attacks. Effectively, we go in, we monitor your traffic, we make sure to take out all the sensitive information that you don't want leaked, because that doesn't even help us secure things. We want to just look at the really important data. And then when there is an active attack, we identify it immediately, and we immediately notify your team to help them stop it. Because we have a team of analysts reviewing this, we also cut out all the noise that comes with other systems. We're not going to give you thousands and thousands of alerts a day and say, hey, you should try to fix all of these. Instead, we're going to validate that an attack is active or dormant, and then make sure that you address that. That technology is available on day one of deployment, and we found that 80% of environments that we deploy to find something incredibly quickly. That technology is built on top of our risk reduction technology. Our risk reduction technology goes in, identifies all the devices in your environment, identifies the risks associated with those devices, and then gives you clear guidance on how to mitigate the risks associated. So we don't just go in and say, hey, here's 1,000 devices, here's a bunch of issues, good luck, let us know when you fix them all. We actually go in and give you the clear guidance and direction needed to actually put protections in place. We do this through a variety of methods. Some is network segmentation, so we limit communication between devices to only what's needed. Before we roll that out fully, we make sure to analyze the segmentation rules and policies that are created so that they're not actually interfering with patient care. We also do things like service hardening and vendor access control. So if your vendor is hacked, it does not become your hack. And if you're connecting to an outside source that's a valid connection, you don't get compromised because of that. Now, as you might imagine, we can go into a much, much deeper demo. We're in booth 306 over the Cybersecurity Command Center, so if you want to see a demo of these technologies, please swing by. As you might imagine, AWS is a critical component of our deployment. We have a hybrid deployment where we actually put our hardware in a passive manner in your network, so we analyze copies of your traffic. That collector will strip out sensitive information. So any patient data that's being analyzed is left behind in your environment. We do not ship that outside of your environment. We take the remaining 1% or so of data that allows us to analyze the security issues related to it, and we do that in AWS. So we take gigs of data, analyze it, find the issues, and then post it in our Cynerio dashboard for you to find out, to learn more about. Of course, your team's probably strapped, so we also have TAMs, Technical Account Managers, and CSMs, Customer Success Managers, that help you go ahead and analyze that as well. I referenced earlier a cool case study that we're working with. I promise you I could go on for an hour about this one if anyone wants the hour version of this, but I'll try to keep it shorter. We were working with a hospital, called Marin Health in the Bay Area. And we were doing our typical risk reduction deployment. This was in 2020, so about 2 years ago. And as we were in there, we actually saw active malware that had slipped past all their other in-place IT systems. They'd built out their full IT environment over the years, they'd done all the standard practices, and yet they still had malware bouncing around and trying to attack their systems. And so we went in, as a good vendor does, and we helped them recover from that malware. We made sure it was off their system, we made sure that it wasn't impacting them. And as we wrapped up that engagement, we took a step back, did a retrospective as you normally do, and realized a lot of what our team had done were activities that were actually automatable, right? It wasn't easy to automate them, but it's something that we could actually develop around. So we developed an MVP out of that, and out of that MVP we had enough success to build out a full product. And that became attack detection and response that I mentioned earlier. So attack detection and response will go in again on day one, identify active attacks, and help you handle those attacks. It's a quick deployment, it's a relatively easy deployment, and it uses the power of AWS to make sure that we're analyzing data quickly and effectively to make sure that you're not getting attacked. If you want to learn more, you can always go to the website listed up there. We have several versions of that video, the full hour-long one. We also have 7 and 4-minute versions if you want to take a look at that as well. So with that, I thank you. Really appreciate you all coming out.